You're listening to the Radius Church podcast, recorded live each Sunday in North Hollywood, California.
We, in this series, this short series, are celebrating the fact that if you are human, which most of you are, you were born to move. Born to move. And not just physically, because lots of things move, but when humans move, the world changes. When we create, the world changes. When we tear down, the world changes. When we build up, the world changes. Last week as we launched this series, my friend Nick was up here speaking to us about how when we move with shocking hospitality, people move from being strangers to becoming neighbors, and they move from becoming neighbors to becoming family. And just can we celebrate Nick? If you were here last week and heard his message, it was so great. If you haven't heard it, I encourage you to go back to our website, listen to the message. You can go to the podcast and hear it. It was so incredible. It spoke right from the heart of Jesus and the heart of so much of what we're trying to do together as a community. I loved it. And what a great beginning to this series. How we invest in the lives of people who are across the street from us, or maybe even across a culture from us. Investing in those lives creates movement in the world. It creates a movement. And that, if you're a follower of Jesus, when you say yes to Jesus, that's the last day it was all about you. Immediately, he's going to turn you around and be like, you got to serve somebody. You got to move on behalf of somebody. You got to speak up on behalf of somebody. You have to invest in the lives of people. And today I want to celebrate how powerful it is when we forget about moving mountains, when we just move our lips. How powerful our conversations are to change lives, especially our conversations around the deepest parts of who we are. When we talk about our spiritual lives or faith or religion or whatever, it gets a little complicated. Let's just admit that. That oftentimes when we talk about these things, it can be misunderstood. People can feel manipulated. Maybe you have felt that way before, and I've felt that way before. And so, out of response to that, we sometimes hesitate to talk about our biggest questions and our deepest revelations at all. I just would prefer not to talk about this in front of people or with my closest friends for fear of ruining this relationship. And so I actually want to bring us back to how Jesus told us lives are changed through conversation. Really through one simple conversation that many of us have all the time. And I think it's the kind of conversation all of us, whatever you believe, are longing to have with each other. I want to bring us back to a moment right after Peter started following Jesus. He was one of his first followers, and you might have heard of Peter. Peter's the guy that gives all of us hope that people who stick their foot in their mouth are also welcomed here, because Peter was so loose-lipped that he really messed up a lot of moments because he spoke too soon. And then he started to follow Jesus because his brother Andrew followed Jesus first. He's like, I'm going to give my life to Jesus, and I'm going to tell my brother, Peter, about this. And then right after this conversation continues to move forward. This is how Jesus continued to build his movement, his revelation in the world. John, one of Jesus' biographers, was there to witness this, and he wrote down what he saw in John chapter 1, verse 43. Here's another conversation. The next day, after Jesus empowered Peter to follow him, the next day Jesus decided to leave for Galilee, finding Philip. Who's Philip? Doesn't really matter. He said to him, follow me. Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida, and we find out that Philip does start to follow Jesus. If he's from Bethsaida, he's probably a fisherman, because that's how most people made a living in Bethsaida back then. He probably knew Peter and Andrew because it wasn't a big town. Word had probably gotten around that Jesus was starting to say some really provocative things. So it didn't come out of the blue, probably, for Philip when Jesus looked him in the eye and said, hey, I've got something for you too. And Philip responded, just one more conversation. And if Jesus is going to change the universe, he might want to pick up the pace a little bit. One conversation at a time. But I got to tell you, for me, I'm really grateful that Jesus moves at the speed of relationship, because it's been part of what has changed my life. So Philip, what does he do right after he starts to follow Jesus? He's a part of the expansion plan. Verse 45, Philip found Nathanael, and he told him, hey, we found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. That description of Jesus might not make much sense to you, but what Philip was doing was addressing the way Nathanael was looking for the Messiah. He'd been reading the Jewish scriptures, and this is how hundreds of years of writings had foretold a guy who was going to show up and save the world. And so Philip, because he knew Nathanael, because he knew what he was asking, he knew where he was looking, he knew what he was excited about, he knew what he was afraid of, because he knew him, he had logged time with him, he'd invested in this relationship, he knew how to talk to him about this thing that had just happened in his life. Philip said, listen, the one we've talked about a lot, the one you've been searching for, I met him. I absolutely met him. And this is why I want to encourage you, if you're a little intimidated about the idea of changing the world, God's purpose through your life begins with the people you already know. God's purpose for your life begins with the people you already know. And let's face it, you already know people who trust you way more than they will ever trust me, because I'm the guy with the microphone on. They trust you way more than they're going to trust a Bible. They trust you way more than they're going to trust a church. You're invested in those lives. They know what makes you tick. They know what motivates you. They know what you're afraid of and what you're excited about. You probably know what they're afraid of and what they're excited about. And they're the kinds of people with whom you can have the best conversations. Philip goes to one of those people, Nathanael, and he has this great conversation with him. This is, of course, how the movement continues to move. This is how it progresses, because we don't want to talk to people who don't care about us. You've heard that adage, listen, I do not care what you know if I don't know that you care. I think that's true. There's this tax agent, Matthew, this despised tax collector right around Jesus' time, and he starts to follow Jesus. So who does he tell? Well, he throws a party for all of his people, unfiltered, and Matthew hung out with a crowd that most of us wouldn't want in our living rooms. But he throws this party with them because that's who he knew. Right after Peter started following Jesus, Jesus takes him to a leper colony, and a leper who is an outcast, nobody touches a leper, he starts to follow Jesus. So who does the leper tell about Jesus? Other lepers. They're like, yeah, you get this. You can sing the same blues I can. Those were relationships that he was invested in. So that's where the conversation happened. You all don't know a guy named Skip McCoy. You've probably never heard of him, even though it's a great name, and he obviously is an awesome guy. Look at this guy. Skip McCoy, but he means a lot to me. In 1978, my parents had just moved from South Dakota. Praise Jesus. They'd moved a few years before that when my mom was pregnant with me, and then I was born here in Southern California, and my dad was working at an insurance company, and he worked alongside a guy named Skip McCoy, and they became really good friends. And over time, they started to get to know each other even more and more and more, and then at one point, my dad, of course, tells me about this later. Skip asks my dad if he'd like to go to church with him, and my dad's like, I'm a Jesus follower. I'm covered, bro. And Skip says to my dad, I can't tell by looking at your life, which sounds offensive. Unless it comes from people that you know love you and see you, and you've already given them permission to be all up in your business. That's a weird way to say that, but people who can tell you when something's a little off, or you feel a little down, or you seem a little angry. Life seems a little fragile for you right now. That's who Skip was to my father, and so my dad takes the cue and goes to church with him the next day, surrenders his life to Jesus. What my dad says is he goes to church and he hears a message about how it's the grace of God that establishes your new life, not your work, not your good behavior, just the grace of God. He gets you started. He's done everything necessary to give you a relationship with him forever. And changed everything for my dad, and it changed my history. So you might not know who Skip McCoy was, but man, I'm thankful for him because he was willing to invest in that relationship. He was willing to get to know my father, to earn legitimate trust, and to invite him into his spiritual experience. When we invest in people without strings attached, buckle up, because something's going to move. Something's going to move. Now, it doesn't mean that all of the questions are going to be answered. I think that's our fear sometimes, is that we start talking about things and we don't feel qualified to answer all the questions associated with that. I know what that's like. That's the way it was for Philip and Nathanael. Philip says, hey, there's this guy from Nazareth that I think is the answer to everything we're searching for. Nathanael responds in verse 46, Nazareth? Can anything good from there? And I'm like, yeah, right? I have no idea what that means. I really don't. I've never been to Nazareth. But to them, Nazareth was the wrong side of the tracks. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense. That like the thing I really need comes from a place like that. And the way I relate to this is when I talk to people about faith or Jesus or the universe, it's like, yeah, we have the same big questions, but the church? Christians? The Bible? Can anything good come out of? I'm like, yeah, we've earned that. Easy target. I love Philip's response, though, because Philip doesn't get defensive. He's like, man, this thing changed my life. How dare you? Because that's what he sounded like. That's what a lot of ancient Hebrew men and women sounded like. No, he just kept it simple. Yeah, you're right. Nazareth is like the least likely place that you would look to find the answers that you're looking for. And so he just says in the rest of verse 46, just come and see. Come see, find out for yourself. I can't manipulate you. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to try to come up with answers that you need to hear. Just show up. I think what's beautiful about this simple moment is that his invitation to Nathanael was obviously fueled by a deep affection. So here's what the people in the room who don't follow Jesus, you're not sure what you think of Jesus yet, want us Jesus followers to remember. If we invest in those relationships, make sure you do not turn those friendships into projects. You are not doing this to fulfill a quota. You're not doing this to, get on schedule. These are people with incredible ideas and bigger questions that'll challenge every one of us and move every one of us. Invest in those lives because those lives are worth investing in. Those lives are worth paying attention to. Those lives are worth learning from. Invest in those lives because you love them. And then as you invite them into your spiritual ideas and invite them into your spiritual experience, don't do it because you have to check a box. Do it because you're pulling for them. Do it when you find out what they're afraid of, and you can say, I have that same fear too, and here's some ways we might be able to address it. Here's a dream that I have, and here's where I find value. I've been there too, and here's the way that I've started to address that. Come and see. Just come in. I can't answer every question. Nobody can. You probably can't either. And even if we could answer every question, it doesn't mean it's going to matter to you. What's it really going to change? Just come and see. Come and see. This is really good news for all of us because it means we cannot change a life. So stop trying. It's above your pay grade. We influence each other a ton, obviously. But down deep, we cannot change a life. We can serve them, yes. We can love them, yes. We can pay attention to them, yes. But change them? No, not qualified for it. That's actually what happens with Nathanael. Verse 47, when Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he accepted the invitation. He said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit," which sounds like he's flattering him so that he can get him to do something he wants. So Nathanael responds, and the way we're supposed to read this is like, how do you know me? Like, don't assume you got my number, Jesus of Nazareth. No. I'm not going to be duped that easily. And then in verse 48, Jesus then lets another shoe drop. He says, I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you. Now, again, this doesn't mean anything to us. It meant everything to Nathanael. I don't know if he was literally under a fig tree and no one could have known. So Jesus, how did you know? It's like, are you psychic? It also metaphorically means somebody who studies the scriptures a lot, that you would study under a fig tree. That was a metaphor. So maybe it just means like, I know you're the kind of guy who just reads all the books and all the blogs and you've got all the answers. I know that. I've seen you. But somehow it was powerful for Nathanael because when that interaction happened, this is what happens to him in verse 49. Nathanael declared, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You're the King of Israel. Again, this is not language we would use, but it's language right out of his own exploration. You are the answer to those big questions. You are the hope in my hopelessness. You are the courage to my fear. You are the answer to my big... Jesus, you're it. You are what I've been searching for. And there's no preacher or program that can make that happen to somebody on a deep level. Yeah, we can get in here and turn on the fog machine and lather up an emotional experience, but K-pop can do that. We do not have the power to change a life, and we should stop trying. We have the power to love. We have the power to serve. We have the power to explore together, get curious together, ask great questions together, but let's stop trying to change each other. We might do the inviting, but Jesus does the finding. We might do the inviting, friends, but it's Jesus ultimately who does the finding. And I don't know what this is going to look like for you. I know what it feels like most Sundays because I have a conversation with one or two of you, and you're like, man, I did not see this coming, but that second song they sang, it's like, that's the anthem I needed. How did they know? That thing you said, that third line of the message, the way you put it, the words that you used, it's like you were reading my diary. And I'm like, we do. We read your diary. We have all sorts of big brother systems in place. And that little camera on your computer, we are watching you. We saw you coming. No. I mean, sometimes it's a coincidence. Of course it is. But every once in a while, and only you would know if this is true, every once in a while it's just like, man, it's just too precise. It's like somebody found me. It's like I showed up and somebody saw me. Man, can you imagine what it was like for Philip to be standing there? He kind of fades into the backdrop in this story at this point. and Nathaniel has this life-changing interaction with Jesus. Can you imagine being on the front row when that happens for your kids? Can you imagine just being like, I got to be a part of my spouse coming to this moment. I got to be a part of my best friend or my neighbor, my partner, coming to find freedom and hope for the first time. Didn't answer all the questions. In fact, it probably raised even bigger ones. But man, to be able to be there when God actually begins to alter a life. Just because I moved my lips, the world has changed. I want to bring us back to something we talk about a lot here. It's a keystone habit of ours. And it really is the way we think God is going to continue to move through us. It's simply to become a people, and this is so mission critical for us, who invest and invite. And that's it. Invest in people in love and in sacrifice and in curiosity, and invite them into your spiritual experience. That's it. It's that simple. Now, God doesn't need all of this to change a life. Sometimes the most life-changing moments happen across the table with a cup of coffee. They really do. But let me encourage you as to why inviting somebody here, maybe invite them for Christmas because, hey, they're Americans. They should probably show up for Christmas. Inviting them for some moment here. And, choose wisely. Think ahead about some of the teaching series that we're talking about, or maybe an event that we're going to be hosting. Oh, that'd be perfect for my friend. And I invite them for that. As you invite them into this space, what they get to be exposed to is not just your story and not just your faith, which is powerful, but they get to be exposed to your Savior, who impacts all kinds of stories, maybe even theirs. Let me give you one final heads up, though, as we begin to move into the lives of people and move into these great conversations. You should expect you to move. You should expect to be moved. If you invest in a life, you're going to be opening up. God bless you. You're going to be, God bless you again. That's it. Only two, though. As you invest in a life, you're going to open up your own life. You're going to be vulnerable. You should be exposed to people who don't think about everything the same way you think about it, vote the same way you vote about everything. They're going to have questions that you can't answer. You're going to be exposed. You're going to feel exposed. So if you feel the need to be right all the time, that might have to move. I know that it's scary to talk about life under the surface with the people that are closest to you. You are afraid that it's going to jeopardize the relationship. But if you love them, then why wouldn't you talk about the things that matter most? Your fear might have to move. So I don't know what's going to happen in the lives of the people in your radius as you begin to move towards them and invest in them and invite them. But I will guarantee you, and this has been my experience, that even if their world doesn't change, which again is above your pay grade, yours will. You will be moved, you will be changed, and you get to be one more glimpse to this world of the sacrificial love of Jesus. By investing in these lives without strings attached and without agenda, you get to let them see how much Jesus loves them and what he's like. What I want to do now is invite our musicians out, and they're going to sing for us right now a prayer. So this will be a prayer in the form of a song. Hi, Shayna. I'm getting out of the center stage because it's yours now. And it's a song that's probably new to all of us. If you get up to speed and can sing along, awesome, we invite you to do that. But if you don't, please don't feel pressure to sing along. This really is a prayer. And what I want us to focus on is maybe this becomes what I'm thinking about or what I'm praying. These words, in a way, become my own. I want to communicate this to God. I also want to encourage you right now that if you're somebody who thinks, you know what, I'm a follower of Jesus, I've never been baptized, maybe the way today I want people to see Jesus through me is by celebrating baptism with these people. And so I'm going to tell you how we can do that in just a few minutes, but that might be something that God brings to mind as we sing this prayer together.
Thank you for listening. For more information, follow us on social media at Radius Church LA and visit us on the web at radius.la.